Hello, welcome back to HEMA Fight Breakdowns. Today we're going to be talking about another tournament. I have Stephen Cheney with me again, and we're going to be talking about the Helsinki Longsword Open 2024. It was a really big tournament that happened in Finland, and Stephen, I believe you went there, right?
Yes, I did. Along with many other Americans, we had a little bit of an invasion.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
from all
Yeah.
kinds of countries.
Yeah. So I guess regarding that, we'll start with some stats. So the big event here, there were four events. There was Sword and Buckler, Messer, Open Longsword, and Underrepresented Genders Longsword. So the big event, which we're going to be talking about, is the Longsword. So that the total entries for that were 115. There were people from 15 different countries, clubs from 15 different countries. So we had Austria, Switzerland, Czechia, Germany, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, Iceland, the Netherlands, Norway, Poland, Russia, Sweden, the UK, and the US. So lots of representation there. Um, for us people from the US who came, there was quite a large contingent. We had 28 um, Americans in attendance, um, and we were from all over. So it wasn't just one group who decided to go. It was a lot of people who decided to come at the same time. So some of the states that were represented were Michigan, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Louisiana, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Minnesota, Colorado, Texas, and Ohio. So all
Yeah,
over the place.
it's crazy
Um,
too that all the way out in Finland we got what almost 25% of the overall participation as Americans.
yes.
Do you have
So
any
we had
idea
the
why
we
so
were the
many people decided to come out to Helsinki this year? For specifically Americans?
um yeah, I don't know. I think everybody kind of decided independently. I know that Josh Farrat was kind of pushing me to go to get my new passport and go out. And from my perspective, a lot of the people from my club just wanted to go,
Hmm.
partly because one of our members, Jeff Will, went last year, and everybody wanted to everybody wanted to go because he went.
Yeah.
And yeah, so and then I guess there was a maybe a snowball effect. More and more people just wanted to go.
Oh,
But
definitely.
whatever the reason, a lot of us ended up there.
Yeah. And I know up at the top here you have some interesting stats that this was probably one of the highest rated tournaments, certainly that I've ever seen. I don't know if it necessarily comes close to, like some of the old long points, but I don't believe there were 1900 rated people really around much during the time of Long Point 2017 and such.
Yeah. So Sean Franklin came up with a tournament rating algorithm, which I think works pretty well.
Hmm.
There's a Sword STEM article explaining it that we can link to.
Yeah.
But based on that rating system, it is the third highest rated tournament of all time.
Wow.
So highest was the European Games in Minsk in 2019, and the second highest was the Swordfish 2018.
Oh, okay.
So okay. those, so the rating of the Helsinki Longsword Open is 1993. Um, Minsk was 2054, and Swordfish 2018 was 2002.
Wow. So I understand that the rules for this tournament were a pretty standard Nordic variation. 3 points to deep targets with cuts and thrusts, 2 points to everything else. Uh, I don't know if there's anything really to say about that.
Right. So torso cut to a torso was a 2 point target as well.
Hmm.
I guess a couple ways that I guess the main way this differs from standard Nordic is the very tight afterblow window. In order to get an afterblow, it had to be basically the same action. at the same time.
Yeah,
Otherwise, it was too late.
and that's a very big difference from tournaments like Swordfish, where usually you have what I guess Sean Franklin would call an entire afterblow after the fact. A two
Right.
tempo style.
Yeah, if you watch some of those old swordfish videos, sometimes they wait a really long time after the first hit before they'll stop the action. So
Oh yeah.
this one very tight. You had to get it right away, which
Hmm.
I personally think is a good thing.
No, I
Um,
like the shift in HEMA towards a one tempo afterblow. I understand why two tempo was tried, and I think there's certain instances where it can be interesting, but it I think it allows too much to follow through sometimes.
yeah, yeah. So another aspect of the rules that I guess was interesting, and I don't know if this is common in Europe, but it was definitely a change from what Americans usually see is you were not allowed to acknowledge hits or um, refuse points or really say anything at all
Hmm.
after the call is made. So the call is made, and that's what it is, and there's no changing it.
I don't
So
necessarily hate that as an idea.
yeah, I agree. I I didn't I didn't hate it. I thought it was fine. I think I think the ability to refuse points I still think is okay, but
Hmm.
what this did was it frees you a little bit from because sometimes you'll get a weird hit and you'll wonder, oh, should I deny that? Like
Hmm.
did I really earn that? But this one, it doesn't matter. Like it could be completely wrong, and both you and your opponent know it's completely wrong, but you can't say anything. You just have to accept it.
Yeah, this is something I've been talking about with some other tournament organizers in Ohio. I feel like the honor system has started to wrap around where people will go through an exchange and one fencer will think that it was crap and the other will think that it's not, and there will suddenly be like a societal expectation or a pressure to deny a point just because the other person thought it was really bad, and it's it's starting
Right.
to come back around to being gamified a little bit too much. So I'm definitely in favor of kind of putting that onus entirely on the director and the judges. So at the very least, fighters aren't getting mad at each other, especially in the middle of a fight where they could, theoretically try to take it out on one another.
Get mad at the judges, not your opponent.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I think especially since there was such a wide variety of locations that people were coming from. So each, Switzerland and Czechia and the U.S. They're all going to have their own specific ways that they do things.
Right.
So just taking the self-calling thing out of the equation is probably a good idea.
Yeah. Plus, it lets you put extra emphasis on the judging and directing, where they went with what was it, three or four judges and one director. So there was, I think as long as you have a lot of good judges that you trust and a good strong director, it ends up working out a lot better that way.
So it was two judges and one director.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, if the judges were not in agreement, then the director had a say. If the judges both agreed, then the director was not able to overrule.
Yeah. Which is when you have good judges, that's a good way to go about it.
Yeah, I think overall the judging was good. I think it was above average
Hmm.
um, as far as tournaments that I've been to. It's never perfect, of course, but I think it was good.
Yeah, no, perfect judging is a thing, and I know they had a really good technical overlay where they were streaming the whole thing in different rings, but I'm glad they didn't try to do anything with camera replays or video calls because it was entirely too far away to be getting good information, as we'll see later when we review the footage.
Yes, I guess I'll say more good things about the tournament. The logistics were excellent. Everything ran on time. Even even having it be such a large tournament,
Hmm.
um, they still finished on time. There were some hiccups with with the software that they were using. Like they had to rearrange the bracket after the first round because it was a larger bracket than the software had ever dealt with. But still, they managed to finish the tournament on time, which is pretty impressive.
Okay.
Um, and also the live stream was excellent, and it was a really helpful part of the experience and good for spectators and good to go back and review if I can go back and watch any match in the tournament, which is cool.
Yeah. No, I know. I was watching it live at the same time. All right.
Yeah.
So if we're going to move on to the brackets, one thing to pay attention to is that the tournament had a little issue with its software. If I understand correctly, there was 125 participants in the tournament. They only let the top 64 go to the elimination bracket. And as a result, I believe a 64 person bracket was more than the software could handle. So if you're looking at this right now, what you're seeing is the top 64 all seeded into the first round, but then the winners were seeded into another 32 person bracket after the fact. So that's just to clear up any confusion as to what you might be looking at. But talking about,
Originally, they were going to do 32, and then they upped it to 64,
I think that's a
which
good
was nice of
idea.
them.
Having only a quarter of your people go from pools to eliminations is a little. So looking at this bracket, I guess it's worth pointing out some of the people that you would obviously recognize that made it out of pools into the top 64. I think a very good portion of the Americans who went made it at least into that top 64. You can see Josh Farrat in here, Colin McConnell, Alex Kotorakos. Lots of people that at least I personally recognize and know, Tyler Durham, who certainly didn't waste their time in coming all the way to Finland. They definitely got their fair share of fights.
So out of the 26 Americans who were in the open longsword, 17 of them made it to the top 30, or sorry, top 64.
Right. So yeah, above the average American was above average as far as participation or accomplishment in the tournament.
So top seed was Pavel Dostal from Czechia, and the second seed was Antonio Ozbritzky from Poland, who is the current number one rating on HEMA ratings.
Yeah.
Um, so the third seed was Cosmos. Um, he's from UK, but I still don't want to try to pronounce his name. I'm just going to call him Cosmos because there's no other Cosmos.
Yeah.
And the fourth seed was Jonas Bergi
Hmm.
from Switzerland. I came out in the fifth seed, so I had some matches in my. I took some hits in my pools that I felt like I shouldn't have, but that's how it goes.
Yeah. And to be clear, I believe seeds 1 through 5, or maybe even 1 through 6, managed to make it through pools without losing a match. So the difference between those seeds was not very much.
Yeah, so the top 13, actually, the top 13 seeds had zero losses.
Oh, okay. So basically, at least one person swept almost every pool they had because with 125 people, they were doing what, pools of 6, 7?
There were 20 pools.
Oh,
I
20
think they
pools.
were,
Okay.
yeah, 20 pools, and they were five or six.
Okay. Got you. Well, that's pretty impressive then, with that many people having a very high seed. Yeah, you would have to go all the way down to seed 13 before you found someone who had lost up until that point. All right.
So
Well,
it's also interesting because to a certain extent, fencing in pools is, if you're like a top level player, which there were a lot of in this tournament, fencing in pools is kind of a different skill than fencing in the bracket
mm-hmm.
because you have to maximize. If you want the top seed, you need to minimize the amount that you get hit. And if you are coming in as a top seed, you are fencing people who are below you in, in rating.
Hmm.
So that's a little bit of a different skill than once you get to the end of a bracket and now you're, you know, fighting for your life against people who are presumably around the same level as you.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. You can't just not lose. You have to essentially get massive point differentials in pools. But once you're into brackets, all that matters is a theoretical 1 point win.
yeah, and I think the seating worked out, as we'll see. It worked out pretty well. All of the everyone who was in top eight, I think all except one were rated 1800 and above. So,
Hmm.
which will,
Yeah. I mean,
I
you
guess
can
we'll
see
go
there were a
ahead
few
and
upsets, like the 10th seed losing to a 55th, but other than that, for the most part, things went exactly the way you would expect. And obviously, once you get down into the 30s, people are fighting people who are very close to themselves. But
So I have the average runs of all the top four people. So the average HEMA rating that Ozbritzky encountered was 1768,
hmm.
followed by Vile, which was 1707, and then for me it was 1699, and for Miro it was 1681. So if we're looking at the specific fencers that Ozbritzky played against, the first one was Stefan Brunner.
Hmm.
So he's from the Netherlands. He's from HVN, and he's good. I know him personally, and met him back in I think 2017. I visited the Netherlands, so he's very good. He's tall like me. I think we're around the same height. So then his second match was against Nathan Graperis, who's from American from Texas, and he is rated, I think, 1703. So very high rating. Tends to do very well in tournaments. And I guess the opposite of Stefan, he's not as tall. Um, Kind of known for being a giant slayer. So his top eight, he encountered the first of the three Finns, Mikko Leito. So Mikko is rated 1836, which puts him in the top 20. And I guess for some background information, there's three really heavy hitters from Finland. So Mikko Leito is one,
Hmm.
then Miro Latela, sorry, apologies for pronunciation again, and Ville Valimäki. So they're all rated over 1800, and kind of guys to beat if you go over to Finland.
Yeah, and all
So
four of them in the top eight.
yes, so he encountered his first Finn, his first Finn heavy hitter in the top eight, Mikko Leito.
Hmm.
And then in the semifinal, he encountered his second, Ville Välimäki. And that match, I think you did a video on it already. That was kind of the one to watch, I think.
Yeah,
That's
it
everybody
really
was kind
was.
of talking about that match. Yeah, very very good match. And then for his final match, he um, fenced the guy who beat me in the semifinal, Miro Latela.
Hmm.
So he collected all three of the fins. And having been there, I will say I don't think there was any doubt as to who the best fencer in that room was. I think Olbritsky is extremely good, and I think he deserves his top spot on HEMA ratings.
Yeah, yeah. The ability to perform so consistently against people who are probably the only collection of people at that high rating that you could find, today. that that's an extremely that's extremely telling of how good he is when you can perform consistently under those circumstances. All right. So we're going to move on to the section where we talk about a fight. We're going to talk about the finals. That's going to be Anthony Ozbritzky versus Miro Latela. And this was the finals match for Helsinki Open. Do you have the ratings offhand of these people?
Yes. So Ozbritzky's rating is 1968, and Miro's rating is 1875.
Yeah. And Miro, I believe, had like what, the fourth or the fifth highest rating at the tournament going in?
He was he was third. So
Third.
I believe that he is currently ranked. So his ranking coming into this was number 12 on HEMA ratings, and Obritsky, of course, is number one. So a couple things to look for
Hmm.
with both of these fencers. So Miro, he tends to stand in a shoulder guard with his right shoulder kind of pointed forward. The
Yeah.
sword is very tight to his head, and the short edge is almost facing out front. So he's going to look to either counterattack or attack with this short edge, with kind of a shield how.
Yeah.
And he'll also be looking for the parry post because this is so close to his head, so he likes to do the tight parry and then the post. The main thing I can really say about Antony is um, he just has extremely tight fundamentals.
Yeah.
He's he doesn't have any tricks. There's no special thing to really look out for. He's just kind of good at the basics of fencing, which how you counter that?
Yeah.
You just have to outplay him. It's the
Yeah.
only way.
So for this first one, it looks like a
Ray!
pretty basic exchange. I'll try to watch that back a little bit slower. But it looks like you said, Antoni just throws a very basic Oberhaus straight to the head, manages to kind of land it. I don't know if it quite made perfect contact, but
So Miro attempts that parry post that I mentioned. So
mhm.
moving here and coming in for their post. But I think at least the judges saw the initial cut break through the parry.
Yeah, it looks like Miro probably had to parry with his flat, and I would imagine that there was a decent bit of flex on there where Antony's cut could have easily just kind of blown through a couple inches of sword and hit a head.
Break! Judges!
All right, so that's that first exchange. A nice lead. So looks like Antony this time is going for the parry riposte. He attempts to throw a somewhat flat Zverkow, but he parries an Oberhau to his head, goes for the Zverkow, lands maybe a little flat to the hands, and then the follow-up is Miro just more or less continues to go forward and try to land a little hand shot in between there. With, of course,
So Miro enters with that short edge attack.
Yeah, I saw him doing a lot of that during the tournament. It's a very interesting strategy where it almost seems like his principal cut is always a short edge cut from the top straight down.
So you can see how after that cut happens. So now, since he's entered with this cut, his hands are kind of already up to defend whatever comes to this side, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense.
Yeah, as opposed to when you're right-handed and you throw a long edge cut, the left side of your body is a little bit more open because of how you have to turn your wrists to get that long edge down. For this one, looks like Miro comes in, he feints high, goes low, gets a pretty nice underhanded cut there. Looks like he mostly manages to parry the follow-up here. It's a little hard to tell because I think his sword sort of bends around Antony's sword, and of course the shift in camera angle doesn't help. But right here, it looks like he should be tangled on the underside of that, and maybe just kind of blows through a little bit, manages to tap him on the back. But you can't see where Miro's blade is during most of this. You know it's here on the hands, and then as it comes through, it almost kind of disappears and reappears over here.
Break!
So
Judges!
I don't remember what they call this, but I believe it would be. Yeah,
I agree
hand
with
shot,
this judge.
back
Initial
shot.
motion is a cut to the arms, 2 points blue. Everything else is late.
Okay, late. And that's going off of what you were saying earlier about the tight timing.
Right.
Break! Judges! Fight!
Watch that again. Not the greatest
So it's
angle
like
for this.
Anthony attacks, Miro parries, and then it looks like Miro's riposte lands and Anthony's follow-up does not.
Yeah. Yeah, a good parry of a thrust there. And then, yeah, the Zverkow underneath certainly gets in under the hands right about there.
Yeah.
With a good defense afterwards. Well, it's definitely like you said.
The target
The
area.
points changed pretty quickly.
Okay, I trust my judge's judgment. 3 points for parry riposte to blue.
It was a cool example of a lower Zverkow locking out an upper Zverkow.
Yeah, no, very, very good move. That's sometimes hard, especially on the right side, to make sure your hands are in the right position. Because if you're not quite in the right spot, your right shoulder can stick out a little bit. But that was very good execution.
Break! Judge.
It's going to be another hard one to see on the video. But his classic opening first shot parried. And I think we get a couple reposts deep. This was also something I noticed pretty interestingly. There was a lot of people who were parrying by sort of not necessarily chasing a blade, but pointing their crossguard, the flat parallel part of their crossguard, just towards whatever was coming at them. Normally, I wouldn't expect someone to really try to parry a shot like this, where they've been parried off to their right side, and almost an expectation they go into a kind of like pointed low hanging parry. That's an interesting choice. But I assume that's mostly parried. And then there's a follow-up thrust, it looks like, that maybe gets stuck a little bit in there at the exact same time as... Oh, no, it doesn't really quite make it.
Yeah.
With another hand shot in the middle. So watching it all again.
We'll see what the...
Break!
Not really clear on what happened in this one from watching the video. I don't know what the judges called.
It doesn't seem like anyone got quite close enough to hitting the target they were intentionally going for. The opener definitely doesn't make it. The counter riposte maybe did. If we had a camera angle over here, we could better see. But it definitely doesn't sound like it landed. This thrust never makes it far enough, and this is really just a parry. So
Judges!
I think they probably accidentally
2
called
points red, cut to the arm
the
area.
middle hand shot. Perhaps this judge had a better angle than we did at the camera. But I can see how that would have landed.
Fight! Break!
Nice.
I think simple parry post there.
Yeah, parry riposte. And this time I think it's a long edge coming down. Yes. It's a long edge strike from Miro this time, not a short edge. Which is... No, that's a short edge. Never mind.
Yeah.
Break!
Good hit
Judges!
straight to the hands on the afterblow.
Yes, 2 points
Yeah,
red.
kind of
cut to the
parries
arm
with like
area.
a
Blue
crossed
is red.
arms here. I don't know if he was intending to go for a counterattack and just picked up the parry, but either way.
Fight!
Yeah, it's very hard to counter Zverev off of that situation too, because when your hands are that high, you have to... You don't get
Break!
easy targets anymore.
Fight!
It's like a double Zverkow with connect.
Yeah, Miro looks like he fainted high and went low, and Ozbritzky didn't really have to do much other than go high at the exact same time to get in over the
Judges!
top. It looks like he might have been trying to Zver underneath of Miro's Shielhao kind of attack, and of course it wasn't there.
Yeah, it looks like Miro hits the arm or torso on that one.
Yeah, and that's one of those hard situations too, where you hit like the bottom part of the elbow and sometimes just a little bit of the back at the exact same time.
Break!
And I can definitely
Judges.
understand wanting to call the arm in that situation over the
I agree
the
with this
torso.
call. Red above,
Remember,
blue
a cut to the
below.
torso is also a shallow target in this.
That is 3
Oh,
points
that's right.
red,
Either
2
way.
points
Didn't
blue.
matter.
First round goes to red.
Oh, another thing I guess we didn't mention earlier is that the finals match was a 2-rounder where they fought twice to the exact same point level as before. I assume there would have been a third round if for whatever reason it didn't go where the same person won twice in a row.
So it looks like Mira is changing to more of a point forward situation here. Britsky seems like has the same game plan as before.
Yeah, definitely threatening with the stab and keeping people at range.
Judges.
Pretty nice little hand shot there. I'm not sure it was necessarily a good idea for Miro to change guards. At the very least, he was being somewhat successful in his parry reposts before, but with a point forward guard, he opens up his hands as a target, and I think it lets Antony play a game that he's perhaps even more familiar with, and keeping people at a distance with his point, and then picking apart their hands whenever they try to aggress.
That's true.
Judges.
Yeah, and it does look like he's
I
kind of like fluidly
switching
switching between both of them because like he's on his right side here, so he has like the flug is here, and then his normal guard is just like right here,
Just
so
a little bit down.
just
Yeah.
like small differences. He can easily switch from one to the other.
Well, that's definitely doing him a service here, where he gets a very nice parry off of a cut attempt. That thrust doesn't look like it makes it all the way in as the flex is on the parry, but then the counter repost is parried. And it looks like Antony gets the second intention off of that one. And that just goes back to what you were saying earlier. Antony's fundamentals are so strong that most people can't throw a thrust with that much commitment and still manage to pull their hands out of it in time to throw any kind of parry, let alone one that's going to be effective. So despite the fact that Miro does a pretty good job of aiming low and going for those hands in the counterattack, just the fact that Ozbritzky was able to go from all the way up in his upper right to all the way down in his lower left in that amount of time is pretty crazy.
Judges.
I think that's one of the aspects of if you're really high level, the difference between like high level and really high level is like if you're up at that level, sometimes you can steal a point that normally you wouldn't get. Like
Okay.
Miro, by all accounts, had him dead to rights there, right?
Yeah.
But he was still able to get his sword back and and steal the point away from him.
Yeah, and to do it against someone who's that high of a level,
Yeah, Miro. Like I'm not saying that there's a huge level difference here because Miro is capable of doing that as well.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, that's something like high level people are able to do.
Yeah. So another little high bind. Miro goes for his typical cut. Kind of catches Ozbritzky moving forward. Gets a nice Unterswerk here that Ozbritzky, I don't know if he thought he was going to be able to get out of the way of it or not, but it does look like it comes in up on the hands here. And then Ozbritzky tries to throw a counter cut, but he doesn't quite make it in time.
Yeah, it should be too late.
I think red was late, 2 points blue.
Or judges calling it too late.
Yes.
Break.
Another nice little hand shot as he gets Miro to lower his guard a little bit. Just a little skipper. He didn't hear a lot of noise, so it probably was a little tippy. But I mean, at the end of the day, if you can go for it, and even if only 50% of the time they call it, that's still fine. Because if you can throw an attack and not be aggressed back with something equally threatening, then go for it.
Why quality? You had the better side for this 2 points red.
2 points red.
Okay,
Five.
they're calling that one.
Break. Judges.
Little thrust. A little bit of a...
The thrust seems like a change in tactics from Miro to me. Hasn't really gone for many thrusts thus far.
No, for sure. And he's doing it in a position that is... I think his idea maybe was that the preparation for his thrust was going to look very similar to the preparation for his short edge downward cut. And maybe he figured if he could catch Antony, parrying in the wrong corner, he'd get a little bit of an advantageous bind out of it. But yeah, that's a very common thrust you see all the time, a very flat, parallel thrust straight to the face that just doesn't quite make it all the way. And then Antony with the very smooth parry riposte there. Going for those hand shots again.
Break.
And that's one of the hard things about dealing with someone in a nice long point is that they can tap your hands and then come up into that kind of like ox type position where they can basically sweep their sword across their quadrants and just stay
Break.
safe.
That might be in time for a double. Might be too late.
Break.
That's the judge's
Definitely
discretion.
close.
Break.
I think that's also why a lot of it comes down to when you see someone going for your hands, you often have a choice. Do I bother to try to parry it, or do I just go straight for their head? And Anthony, in this case, is just so fast that he can hit you in the
Right.
hands, and even though you've maybe made the decision to go for his head, he can get his parry almost all the way there.
Judges. 2 points red, cut to the arm.
Yeah, they're calling blue late, or at least not calling it.
So that's how tight it is. So even that, which I would consider same action, even that was too late.
Fight.
Clean parry post there.
Yep.
Break.
Yeah, unfortunately, the thing that Miro has been getting hit with this whole time.
Fight.
I definitely understand the instinct to go back to that favorite opener every once in a while, but I don't think it's ever even come close to hitting Anthony so far in either of these fights.
Break.
And
Judges.
he's been getting the parry repost off of it pretty consistently.
Where did you see land?
Yeah.
You have
I
the
mean,
better
it's
side.
Anthony has been landing his initial attacks too. So it's like,
Yeah.
how do you want to get hit? Do you want to get parry post, or do you want to wait and just get hit with a direct attack?
Yeah, no, I understand there's a lot of frustration inherent to when you feel like there's really nothing you can do, you might as well go back to the thing you do best because it at least has the
Nice,
best
no
chance
score.
of working.
Fight.
But I did
Right.
sort of notice that after he throws his short edge, it did look like a parry initially, but it actually looks like he might have tried to just throw an afterblow to the head there. At the very least, his edge was in line.
Break.
It's a little hard
Judges.
to tell,
Yeah.
though.
Where did
Yeah,
you
I'm
see
not sure
land?
if it made it or not.
You have the better side.
It
for
also
this,
probably
but
would
it's
have been
Judges
out of
don't
time anyway, considering the tightness of their
Yeah.
afterblows.
Break. Judges.
It's a little bit of an
That's just
awkward
a-
first.
Preparation attack.
Yeah. The first time we've seen Anthony do a little bit of a feint, where he's trying to feint the thrust and then actually goes for it. Looks like it kind of glances off the hand before he winds it up to try to protect himself.
Break. Judges.
Yeah, they're giving it. Yeah, it might have
I think blue also.
landed on the. That's the thing, like with lower torso thrusts, also they're like the arms are in the way, so it's really hard to see. So it could have landed on the lower torso, like on the belly, and then slid off.
Mm-hmm.
Could have missed.
Yeah,
Hard to say.
and then any attempt to throw a parry or a counterattack usually results in the person accidentally just pushing the sword off of their own body anyway. So even if it had stuck by this frame, by the time these arms are going up, that left hand can just sweep it right off to the side of the body so that it slides off. Though, yeah, that would be a pretty tough one to
Judges.
call.
So
I
one
think
judge
blue
calls it, the
also
other.
landed in that
let's see.
exchange. I think it was thrust cut to the head, 3 points each.
No score.
Fight.
Okay, so it calls it a double. I can somewhat understand that.
Break. Judge.
The best camera
Fine.
angle to date. So here it looks like Miro tries the exact same thing. Does a little bit of a feint down low to stab towards the torso, but rather than biting on it,
Break.
Anthony just throws a cut to the top of the head.
Fight.
Just well landed there.
Break. Judges.
Yeah. They might call it a little
Yes.
late, but there was no attempted parry, so I
Thrust to
wouldn't
the
say it was
arm,
the
2
same
points
intention.
blue.
2 points blue.
Last exchange. Fight.
Okay, well,
So 2 points for blue, I guess. Thrust to the hand.
yeah, thrust to the hand and afterblow not counted. So this was going to be final exchange. Very close. Very defensive from Anthony.
Break.
Murray needs 3
Judges.
points, so he goes for a thrust,
Yeah.
and Anthony
Break.
tactically doubles to the head.
Yeah. No, that's always one of the really tough situations to be in a final exchange, knowing that you have to go deep in order to win, but the other person
Right.
can sort of just consciously know that whatever it is that you go for, if it's not properly defended, that doubling it out is somewhat easy.
Right.
Though with a tight afterblow timing, that's a lot harder to do. In a more traditional swordfish format, where you'd have an entire tempo after you got hit to make sure that you canceled it out, that's certainly much easier. Though in this case, it looks like Miro feints a thrust from high to low, manages to land in the torso just as Ozbritzky just throws a short little cut to the top of the head, ensuring that he
Break.
can't really get the
Charges.
worst of that exchange.
Draw.
And,
Yeah, the psychology of that exchange is interesting on both sides. So Miro needs a clean hit. Any type of clean hit, really. A shallow hit will at least keep him alive because it'll give him a tie. A deep hit will win him the match, but if like all you really need to do is stay alive. Winning the match would help, I guess, but staying alive is all you really need to do. From Antoni's perspective, right? He just needs to make the exchange not clean. So any double will do, but at the same time, there's a risk to doubling on purpose, because if you're doubling on purpose, you're accepting a hit,
right.
and there's no guarantee that your hit is going to make it, right? So if you're accepting that they're definitely going to hit you, and there's a chance that your hit might not land, so you may decide that it's more optimal of a move to go for your points, to actually try to land a clean hit. So there's definitely some aspect of decision making there. It looks like he decided to go the route of doubling to the head, which if you're going to double anywhere, that's a good place to do it, because you'll come out on top.
Yeah.
Especially since Miro's decided to go low there. So it kind of gave him an unobstructed line of sight to the head. But still, either way, interesting situation.
Sure.
Charges.
And that's, of course,
Cross
the
to the
last
torso,
exchange.
cut
It's
to the
a
head,
double.
3 points
Antony
each.
wins the
Round
second fight that they had for first, which means he won 2 in a row, and that is the end.
Goes to red. Match goes to red.
A really good finals match. I'm really glad that they have the finals do 2 fights in a row with a pretty minimal break. I do like it when finals matches get something special, so that they can feel a little bit more impactful and give both fighters an opportunity to really adapt to each other. Though, I sort of feel bad for Miro, because all of his adaptations ended up not really going anywhere.
Yeah, I think it's just a kind of a testament to how good Ozbritzky is, really. It's just, like, how do you beat, like, very solid fundamentals, right? So again, no trick, nothing, like secret techniques going on. It's
Cuts
just
to the head,
solid
cuts to the hand,
fencing.
thrusts to the body, and that's pretty much it. Good parry riposts. There's not much you can do.
I think that was there was a lot of good blade work in this. It was, it wasn't a smash fest. It was, it wasn't overly defensive. It wasn't overly offensive. It was a good match. Good to watch.
One thing I also wanted to bring up, maybe a little underrated, Antony's footwork here is very interesting. He has a very Olympic fencing style, I would say, footwork, where if you look at his back foot, he's always on the toes, on the balls of his feet, on his back foot, but his front foot is flat. He's in a pretty deep stance, and his shoulders are usually at the level of his arm, his knee, which generally tells me that because of his long guard, he's utilizing the length of his arms to make sure that that long point is out there and threatening. And for a lot of people, having such a deep forward weighted stance would be difficult to move in. But, as you can see, he's got the leg strength and the athleticism to move so seamlessly while in such a deep forward stance. And that's a pretty big testament to the strength of the fundamentals that we're talking about here. All right, so at the end of everything, the order went as such. Ozbritzky won, Miro got second. Steven, of course, you got third, and Ville got fourth. You had a third place match against Ville later on. That was a pretty good fight as well. but we're not going to review it just for time purposes. Steven, I know at the end of this you usually talk about someone who you wanted to shout out. Is there anyone who went to this tournament who performed way better than I guess some people would have expected?
Yes. Actually, I want to shout out somebody from my club, Henry Reynolds. So he had a very good tournament. He made it to the second round of eliminations, and I think everybody at our club kind of knows how good he is, but he kind of finally got an opportunity to, demonstrate that and place where he should in a tournament. So.
Nice. Very good. And he couldn't have come to a better tournament to demonstrate that with how insanely high the skill level was here.
Exactly.
All right. Well, congratulations to everyone who did well and showed up and made it. I'm sure the trip to Finland was anything but convenient, but they did it anyway. That was
Some
it for
stories about the
today.
trip, but
Yeah. All right. That's going to be it. If you'd like to see any more stuff like this, feel free to subscribe. If not, I hope to see you next time.